Hello and thanks for joining us on the Signature Show. I am Vin Martin Obiora Ilo. As always, I'm so excited that you're out there and joining us. Today on our show, we'll be focusing on a very distinguished member of the National Assembly. For a lot of people, he has represented the best of the Igbo man. He has been in the National Assembly for a while. He used to be deputy governor. He has also hungered to be governor of his state. My pleasure to welcome to our program distinguished Senator Enyinnaya Abaribe. Distinguished Senator, glad to have you.
Glad to be here, thank you.
Well, the last election, a lot of people, wonder how you surmounted the challenge, how you were able to win with all the roadblocks, with all the challenges. Of course, in your old party, that's where you would have wanted to run for that election, or even run for the election, since you also wanted to run for the office of governor. But at the end of the day, you ended up in another party, and I think you were the only senator of that party that survived. How did it happen?
Well, I can't say how it happened. I think that we'll just say that we thank the people of Abia South Senatorial District who found me worthy to be sent back to the National Assembly. In actual fact, I think that election was essentially a contest that was between the records of the incumbent governor at that time in Abia State and my own record for the people of the senatorial zone. I know that a whole lot of people were so interested in it from all over the country. First of all, because the habit and the tendency had been that governors exiting from their positions will all want to come to rest in the National Assembly. And I think in the 2023 elections, about 7 governors or so were unable to make that transition, which means that I wasn't the only one. I was able to surmount an incumbent governor. What I mean by records is that INEC also has some kudos. The National Assembly also has some kudos, because if you remember, we fought hard to bring in electronic transmission of votes, our results, and what that meant was that you could be sure that nobody will go to a center and write results like it used to happen in the past. And so, as results were coming, they were also being uploaded at the appropriate time. Never mind what happened with the presidential one, which happened at the same time. That is sub judice now, so I will not comment about that. But that for our own, the Senate and the House of Reps were all uploaded. And of course, INEC saw the results, they were clear. The people of Abia South Senatorial Zone decided that on balance, that I represented more of what they wanted than the incumbent governor at that time, and they made their decision based on that.
So that leads me to ask, when you talk about records, what did you put on the table when you were asking to be returned to the National Assembly?
Basically, what a legislator does is, first of all, representation. You represent your people, whichever way. Secondly, you make laws. And of course, every other attendant thing that follows it. There's this notion that every member of the National Assembly has to be able to build roads, to construct schools. Those ones are ancillary, because what you do with regard to that is that once the national budget is out, you can start seeking to make sure that your constituency benefits from whatever projects that are put in the national budget. Sometimes you also struggle to put some projects that you think that they actually need. But the essential thing is representation. And so when the people of Abia, and I can say indeed most Nigerians, saw that I was always an advocate for good governance, an advocate for their rights, an advocate to make sure that the right things are done and things are done properly, and that nobody is treated as a second-class citizen in his own country. I think it was very clear. They saw me as their champion, and that was what I brought out when I was doing the campaign. And I make bold to say that none of them ever said, oh, what is it that you have done? Nobody wanted to know. Because, of course, they know that I'm not a member of the executive. They know that I cannot come and say, oh, I built a trunk A road and all that. I'm not supposed to do so. It's the job of the executive. The point that they now made is, okay, when you put these two individuals side by side, what is their record compared to where they are? And they found, of course, that in terms of representation, that they didn't see anything that was deleterious with me. And so they felt that it was much better to go with what they already know. That's, in summary, what happened.
You have, over these years, really, really wanted to be governor of your state. Probably because of some of the things you've told me. I mean, looking at the job of a legislator and looking at the job of someone in the executive, probably you still feel or felt that if you were in the executive, you can do more for the people of Abia. Do you have any regrets that you have not achieved that ambition and that you're back in the Senate?
No, I don't. Not at all. The point really is that you can seek for something and you don't get it. So if you don't get it, what will you do? You move on. What actually has happened, I think we can also locate it in the general Nigerian malaise, which is that there's always an effort to make sure that the right people are prevented from coming in to do the right job. And so I found that at every point that I go to seek for the position of governor, there's always all manners of obstacles. Not from the people, because we hadn't come to that point, but from the party apparatchik, the people who decide within the party who gets what. And so in the last one, never mind the previous one, it's a story for another day. But in the last one, what really happened was that there was a mistake by the political parties, which has now been cured by a court judgment. That mistake was this. At the point at which we in the National Assembly were amending the Electoral Act, apparently, after we had done the specific amendments, when it came to the fact for who will determine within the parties who becomes a candidate, that is, who becomes a delegate. It was already in the old Electoral Act that party executives were supposed to be candidates. So it was assumed that it was there, but we now added a proviso to say that there will be 3 persons elected who will join the party executives. But it was now found later that it wasn't uploaded. Now, when we made the argument that it didn't really matter, because we also said in the Electoral Act that the parties have a right to make their decisions on who. But the party apparatus, seeing let me say, seeing an opportunity, latched onto it, and now said it was only those 3 persons. So what we found in all the parties was that, okay, we're going to do elections for 3 persons, who will, and the elections were supposed to come from bottom up. But of course, as you know how it happens, party executives in each state now went to the leader of the party, which is the governor, and now they simply wrote list of names of who
The 3 delegates.
who became the 3. And so that was how the infamous 3-man delegate thing now came about. So ultimately, it meant that one single person now had to determine who becomes a candidate at all levels. But that's not democracy, that's something else. So we now had you could now say that in a state where the party does not have a governor, it was far more democratic because not one single person can determine. But in a state where you had a governor, he ended up determining who becomes a member of that 3-man delegate. So we were all frozen out. That's how you now saw that my former party, People's Democratic Party, lost out heavily because by handing over a democratic process to a totally undemocratic one, what now happened was that decisions were taken that were not in consonance with the democratic ideals. So whatever whims and caprices that the leader of the party in the state determines, not the generality of the party people and not the generality of the populace, presented the person. And that's how you find that there was a clean sweep. I mean, in Abia State, for example, the party went from controlling all House of Rep candidates, the 8 of them, to 1. Went from controlling 2 senators and 1 APC senator to no PDP senator at all. Went from controlling the government through the governor to another government. So, and this was replicated in so many other states. So, you could see that that singular decision to close your eye to what was in the law and take what you thought was expedient to give you power ended up costing the party so much. Because that's what happened. P2B left, so many other people left. In Abia, so many of us who were the pillars of the party walked away, and that was the end of the day for them.
And a lot of people thought that when you left for APGA, you would have contested for governorship in APGA. Why did you?
No, at the time that I left for APGA, understand that I was going to another party. Yes. I had been exhausted running through the primary process in PDP. And so I didn't have the, how we say, resources to run into another gubernatorial process. And the party now said, listen, you're a very well-known figure in the National Assembly. And we don't want to lose somebody like you to speak for us in the National Assembly. Why don't you just still stay there for us? So I had to sit with my political group and we looked at it and we considered and weighed all the options. And we said, well, a bird in hand is better than two in the bush. So rather than go back into another contest, you may win quite all right, but you will have been bruised so much after now doing the first bruising that the elections itself, which was looming, will no longer. Don't forget that we had this very short space of time, according to the INEC timetable, between when these decisions were supposed to be taken and when INEC got every party to submit a list of candidates. I think it was about 3 or 4 days. And so that's what happened. But I don't regret it at all.
Let's look at the Igbo position today in Nigeria. Some people say Igbos are permanently disadvantaged in Nigeria with what has happened. The example is, every other zone has, been given an opportunity to be president. And this time that it looked like clearly it was the turn of the Southeast, the rest of Nigeria won't let them get that opportunity. Some Igbos and Nigerians think that maybe the Igbos should be blamed for what happened to them. And for others, it's an intentional action by the rest of Nigeria to make sure that the Igbos remain marginalized. In all this, what is your position and how do you see it?
Well, I don't see us marginalized. I think that if Igbos feel anything, we shouldn't bother. Look, Igbos took the best decision in the interest of Nigeria. And I will explain what I mean. At the point of when Igbos collectively determined that Obasanjo should be supported, despite the fact that an Igbo man, Alex Ekwueme of blessed memory, had just been denied the opportunity by the then military that are going to hand over. And despite the fact that Igbos were actually looking at the whole thing at that time for national unity, Igbos still supported Obasanjo. Now, and you know what happened thereafter. He formed a government that has remained the best government till date in terms of economic revival of the country. And what did he do? He didn't marginalize anybody from the Southeast. He actually used the eggheads from the Southeast as the core of his cabinet, and eventually led to a government that was able to exit this debt peonage that we have just been brought back to. When the Igbos also supported President Jonathan, it was also because they saw that he was a better economic manager than whoever contemporary was running against at that time. And he also ended up making Nigeria, at that time, one of the fastest growing economies in the world and still. And of course, at the point at which the APC with propaganda brought everybody and said, it was going to be another person, Igbos saw through that whole propaganda and never supported that
The
government.
Buhari ticket.
The Buhari government. We never. And what happened? It took us all the way down into where we now went from a government that didn't owe to a government that today is not able to actually pay its way. So what does that mean for us? What it means essentially is that Igbos have always taken the best decisions for the rest of the country. Why? Because we're always everywhere. We know everybody. We are part of everything. So the question is that from the time that President Buhari became president, he made it a point of duty to Fulanize the country. And at every point, made every effort to make a section of the country, the southeast, a pariah. And that particular trend is what we're seeing with the present government.
Are you suggesting that what happened to Igbos in the 2023 presidential election, starting from 2022 as we're preparing for that, that it could have been an orchestrated plan by the Buhari government to ensure that the Igbos were seen as pariahs?
Yes. There were a lot of Igbos who left and from the PDP government then on the premise that they were promised that they were going to be president and that the President Buhari was going to make them president. That also was what they felt. But when they now entered that, I would say, the political arena that was represented by the Buhari government, what did they find? They were also
disappointed?
Yeah, disappointed. So I think that it's nothing but a deliberate action. But I've never felt, I don't feel marginalized. You can say that you won't let me be minister of finance, you won't let me be minister of petroleum. Where does that get you? The essential thing is this. For this country to work, we need the best hands. And if you now want to keep away a section that is very innovative, that's very highly educated, that also knows the wherewithal of how to make the country prosperous, you're only hurting yourself. You're not hurting the Igbos. If you check the statistics everywhere, if not for the sit at home every Monday and all these people running around in the Southeast, murdering people and killing people, the statistics does not show that where all these presidents come from, who have tried to denigrate and push down the Igbo, that their standard of living is better than the average person in the village in Igbo land. It's not. So what is it that you're doing? Actually, all you're doing is simple. You're cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Some people have said that, yes, there might be this intentional effort to, put Igbos down. There might be. But that Igbos have not done enough to help themselves. And they've said that, for instance, when the Southerners wanted to be president, they went out of their way, organized themselves, try as much as possible to speak with one voice, put money together, fought for it, and then when they had secured it for themselves, they now decided who was going to be. They said when the Yorubas, 1993 and all those challenges, you saw, a combined energy, that this is a collective challenge, and they were working. Not that everybody said it was going to be Obasanjo, but there was a tendency that everybody knew that there was a project. Bring this thing back to the southwest, and then we can decide who it goes to. They accuse the Igbos of not having this kind of synergy.
Well, with all due respect, I think that is fallacious and not correct. And the facts are there. In 1999, to bring Obasanjo to board, there was no combined Southwest energy towards bringing anybody. No. There was a combined energy of all the elite in Nigeria, let me just put it that way, and all the tendencies in Nigeria to get rid of the military. That was it. And in order to get rid of the same military, and don't forget that at that time, the leader of the disparate group of people, the G34, that ended up bringing in the PDP, were led by an Igbo man. It was the same military that connived and changed what had already been agreed. Because everybody had agreed that the best person was the late Alex Ekweme. So, with all due respect, you can't tell us that. And even if you want to say that the Yorubas had what Yorubas actually did was that they did not want the same Obasanjo. And so he lost in all the Yoruba states, including Ogun State, where he came from. So that's number one. It's not correct. Number two, with regard to Jonathan, nobody can say that the South all came together. No. All that happened was that the incumbent president, for which he was vice president, unfortunately died, and he was now sworn in. And once you're sitting on that seat, the next step was that there was an election coming, and there was now this effort by everybody in PDP to say, we have a president, so let him stay. And Igbos were part of those who also insisted that you will leave a man who is there and who is doing well to continue his job, because we have a sense of fairness. This later day story is just a later day story. It's not correct. There is no group in Nigeria that is, oh, okay, all of them come together and then they struggle, they go and tell everybody. Because if you want to say that, no, none. Because you will see how it all came. The Buhari government wasn't brought in by Buhari, despite his fabled 12 million votes, which I know was not 12. Because at the time that he contested against late Yar'Adua, what he got was 6 million votes. So you can just see that when a narrative is brought out in this way, that narrative is just simply brought out to explain what is not there.
Are you saying that the Igbos are not doing anything wrong?
I'm saying that Igbos are not doing anything wrong. We make a decision on who is the best person to do A, B, or C. And if anybody comes around and tells you that, oh, they love Igbos is because we don't come together, you ask them, did they also come together? At the time that Shagari went and did his own election, he fought against Adamuchi Roma. He fought against, there are so many of them that he fought against. At the point that the decision was taken, they now, at the time that Obasanjo came, he also fought against Falaye and Bolaige and all that. So what happened? So what I'm saying is that at the time that people deliberately concord something and do something bad against the Igbo, they now turn around, turn it all the way around and say, oh, it is the Igbos themselves. No one in Nigeria has said, we have all come together and have agreed. In fact, that is why you find out that, okay, Igbos don't love the Igbo, but what happened during the last election? Peter Obi took all the votes in the Igbo land. And everybody who complained went to check and found out that it was correct. Why? Because Igbo saw him as the best person to run our economy at this point that we need a sane, sober, very, very meticulous and prudent person to run this government. And of course, what are we seeing today?
They didn't vote because he was an Igbo man.
No Igbo voted him because he was an Igbo man. They voted him because they saw him as the best person. And I stand to be challenged by anybody. And that is why you could see that his appeal was countrywide. Never mind whatever you hear today about, he didn't win in this area or that area. It's not true. All the people that were deprived, disenfranchised, disadvantaged, and all that, saw him as a beacon of hope. And that is the fact. We don't run away from facts.
Let me ask you, are you by any means suggesting that the rest of Nigeria did not, return a good turn to the Igbos in 2023? Having the Igbos supporting Obasanjo, supporting Jonathan and even Shagari and all that. Are you saying that if Nigerians did what Nigerians did for the Southerners, the Southwesterners, that an Igbo man would have been president in 2023?
Well, what I'm saying is that you don't win elections or you don't run elections, let me just put it that way, without passing through a political party. Now, the major political parties had a decision to make. And Igbos who were in those political parties made their case and said, this is the time for us. Yet, all the decision makers in those major political parties denied the Igbo the chance. That's all. And nobody can controvert what is a fact. In fact, I can remember that the late Abba Kyari, prior to this, came to Enugu to meet with Igbo intelligentsia and part of his party people and said, oh, it is your turn to be president. If you support our party will make sure. But what happened? What happened? The same thing in the PDP. Everybody said, oh, no, but what happened? At the point that it just got near there, every of the rule changed. First, the rule that it was going to be a Southerner changed to now say, oh, let it now be open. Look, the story is okay, out there. Let nobody tell us anything.
Let's leave that aspect. You are one person, one Igbo person who says that, look, they sit at home, this internal bickering, all this shooting ourselves on the foot should stop. And not only in the National Assembly, outside the National Assembly, you've picked holes with the conduct of some persons in the IPOB and all those insurgent groups. Specifically, you talked about Simon Ekpa. And I'm asking, you are one of the highest ranking political office holders from Igbo land. Is there no way that negotiation with the government, conversation with the government can lead to probably a diplomatic action to, check the actions and the activities of some of these Igbos who are causing trouble from outside Nigeria?
I'll give you just one scenario. There's a guy who was the leader of the Yoruba
Sunday
Igboho. It's in Benin Republic. The government engaged with the Benin government and eventually got him arrested by the Beninois government. That's what happened. And when they did so, they now tried him, and I think they kept him quiet. What is the problem in the Nigerian government engaging with the Finnish government for somebody who has posted on his page, media page, made broadcast and all that, urging people to kill other people in Nigeria? And everybody seems to keep quiet within the Nigerian government. So that is why a whole lot of people in the Southeast think that it is nothing but also part of, I would say, benign neglect of the Southeast by the federal government. And we have also, on our own, tried to engage the government. And we always assure, don't worry, we're going to look into it. But there's no concrete action, which suggests that some people prefer what is going on in the Southeast, where all manners of persons, criminals, false flag operations, and I deliberately use that word, false flag operations, cultists, kidnappers, all that, everybody has come into the fray, and the place has become
some say the governors are not doing enough.
I don't think anybody can blame the governors. The reason is simple, too. No governor can give an order to a DPO. None. Because a governor calls a DPO and says something is happening in your area, he has to call his police commissioner. The police commissioner has to call the
police IG.
Inspector General of Police. In fact, he had to call his AIG. His AIG is going to call his Inspector General of Police. And then, so, you will always find, and of course, if the AIG is not interested, or he is suborned in some way, you can just tell them to ignore. Because the question is here. The Southeast is the most policed place in Nigeria today. Yet, people will just come out, kill, and run away. And nobody. Yet, if you go from Onitsha to Aba, you will count not less than 95 checkpoints. If you go from Enugu, same thing, anywhere you go in the Southeast. In fact, some are just not up to 1 kilometer. 500 meters apart, there's also another police checkpoint. What are those people doing? Yet, for insecurity, the Southeast continues to wallow in insecurity, despite being the most policed place within the country. So you don't blame the governors.
People like you and those that are not Southeasterners have argued that releasing Nnamdi Kanu would help to douse the tension in the southeast. Yes, they agree that there's a judicial process that's going on. A number of them also think that a political solution could help. Once again, you're high up there. People like you, are you having conversations with the executive to see that they look at this political alternative and see if truly that can douse the tension in the South?
Yes, there are conversations going on.
Are you getting positive replies or responses?
No, not at all. Not yet. But there are conversations going on. And we are telling them these are the facts. The question is this. Most of all these kidnappers, murderers, and arsonists, and all these people who are running around, including the false flag operations people.
What do you mean by false flag operations?
What I mean by false flag operations is that somebody like Asari Dokubo openly confessed on television that, oh, that he came with his boys to come and cause mayhem in the southeast, and nothing happened to him. Which means he was sent by some people within the government. Nothing has happened till date, despite his making such an outrageous statement. So, what I mean, in effect, is this. While the conversations are going on, the fundamental thing that everybody knows, including those in government, because we're pointing it out to them at all times, is that these people use the incarceration of Nnamdi Kanu as a hook in which they continue to say, except he's brought out, we will continue doing what we're doing. Of course, that is not true. It is not by killing another Southeasterner that you're going to bring him out. And we have pointed that out clearly to them. But the point is this. Nnamdi Kanu remains part of the solution that must be used to resolve all the issues. And so, I won't say much more about the conversations that we're having, but be rest assured that we are making these points very clear.
Let's leave the Southeast, let's leave the question. Let's go back to the National Assembly. This, in quotes, tradition, and in quotes, take a bow in the National Assembly is getting a lot of Nigerians worried, especially when it comes to clearing ministerial appointees, other appointees of the federal government. And people are asking, is this not promoting the challenge you've talked about even in this interview, poor recruitment of public officers? Is it not encouraging mediocrity? And then putting the legislature in a situation where Nigerians continue to say that they are compromised? Is it not something the National Assembly can change and do a thorough job when nominees' names come before them and insist, for instance, that the president, if he's bringing Vin Martinillo or Keiko Kafo or Ahmadu Ali or whoever, that a portfolio should be attached so that those of you in the National Assembly can ask specific questions, evaluate qualifications, evaluate whether they have what it takes to serve in those positions, instead of telling them, take a bow and go.
Yes. At the moment, there's a proposal for that. There's a proposal. We have tried it before. Like you stated when you started. I've been in the National Assembly for some time now. I came in 2007. And so I've seen most of the efforts that had been made by members of the National Assembly to get the executive to attach portfolios to whoever they are sending to us have always been resisted, not by members of the National Assembly, but by the executive themselves.
What do you do about it?
The point really is this: if you don't get the buy-in of the executive in a bill to make it law, if they don't sign it, you still come back to zero.
Would it be correct to say because of this resistance?
No.
Just
it's
a
not,
minute.
it's not correct.
Because of this resistance by the executive, that the accusation of rubber stamping by the National Assembly can hold.
No, it's not correct. Let me also say this, because people don't know the internal workings of the National Assembly, and that we actually have some robust debates on it. Prior to this time, we have had robust debates and actually suggested, why don't we get rid of this privilege that is enjoyed by members of the National Assembly, either the president, either the Senate or the House of Rep. Even in this particular one, because usually before we start any exercise of this nature, we always have an executive session, which is a closed session, and we talk very to ourselves, truthfully. And some people actually suggested it, but the majority of opinion was also that this is a privilege conferred on members of the National Assembly, and we don't willy-nilly just throw out a privilege, because we don't also know how many members they were going to bring. What I'm saying is this: there are two aspects here. Any member of the National Assembly who comes and is nominated to come to become a minister has that privilege. It does not stop us from exercising our right to ask questions. And in fact, some of them have come and said, ask me any question. I think that as much as we look at that, we should also look at the executive. This morning on Channels Television, I was watching them and they were saying, oh, there's somebody who did not do national service, this and that. Look, a president brings Mr. A, and he says to us, we have checked him, we have looked at his credentials, we have done security check on him, and we have seen that it's nice, it's clear, it's decent, and so you do that. First of all, we don't have the capacity to do a security check because we don't know whatever. What comes to the security should not come to. Where we get petition, we get all manners of things that we can use. It now behooves on us to say, okay, if you're a member of the, you can, as a member of the National Assembly or former member of the National Assembly, you come there, you say, no, I would like to. But then, you're a medical doctor. What question will I ask you? Not knowing where you're going to be deployed.
But that brings me to the question, sir.
Back to where you came from.
It brings me to the question. This creates a problem for the National Assembly. Why, for instance, when the National Assembly say, we've talked about this from 2003 to 2007 and all that, and then you are going the same route once again, we are not debating on this until you do the right thing.
Precisely.
What stops the National Assembly from doing that?
We don't have such powers to determine for a president who he brings. I said at the beginning, the law does not require him to attach a portfolio. We have tried, and we're still going to try, because I think that should be axiomatic now, seeing what is going on, that we must make a legislation to ensure that whatever you're bringing as to us, you must attach a portfolio so that we know. Because what we now do is we guess. So in the last one, okay, there's a Latif Fagbemi, there's a Festus Keyamo, they're both sons.
So any one of them can
And
be.
then any one of them could be, this is, so okay, do we ask you a legal question? Do we ask you a general question? What do we do? I think that what is going on, to my mind, if I'm a president, I will never bring somebody without being sure that that person is number. I'm telling you, all that we find is that presidents appoint people based on sometimes primordial sentiment, sometimes job for the boys, sometimes reward for political loyalty, sometimes, and then one or two or three on the basis of their pedigree.
This thing is
And it's affecting the country.
It is laughable that a portfolio is reserved for Kaduna State. The president has not seen the candidates. He doesn't know who they are going to be. And then a portfolio is reserved for Kaduna State. And I think is ridiculous.
Well, that is your own words now, a portfolio reserved for a state.
But that's what they sent to your assembly. And I didn't see any senator saying, why should this be?
No. They didn't tell us that the portfolio was reserved.
No. It's written right there. They said, so portfolio, Kaduna State. There was no human being.
Well, at that time, you got that at the point of swearing in, not at the point of they are being sworn in, they are being screened.
Does it not
if it came at the point of being screened, somebody will have asked that question. What do you mean a portfolio is being reserved for this? I tell you, we have now moved from the ridiculous to the sublime. I mean, it's just a crying shame that in the 21st century, where India has just landed a probe on the moon, not just where they always land, but at the south pole of the moon, to look for water. India, that was at the same point with us in the 50s and 60s. And so you want to ask yourself, what is it that we are actually doing? Now, when we even had the number of people that were being brought, that told any discerning mind in Nigeria that this government has still not gotten their focus right.
Didn't it bother the members of the National Assembly?
It bothered us, but we
that
do not.
A name was forwarded to you, and you were getting ready to screen this person, and then is withdrawn, and then we hear the presidency and the state saying, we don't know who nominated her. Oh, we don't know who put her name. Oh, we don't know who. But didn't you find it embarrassing?
Well, personally, but not the National Assembly, we don't do nominations.
No, that's what I'm saying.
The person that should find it very embarrassing is the president and his cabinet, his members themselves. Because they are the people who have ridiculed the country.
Yes, because we hear Ganduje, who is the national chairman of APC, saying that we don't know who nominated her, and the president has asked me, did you nominate her? And I'm asking the other person, and you're talking about security reports that a minister of the Federal Republic could have been nominated, and no one in the presidency knows who put forward her name.
Well, I think that's a question that people in the presidency will be much better positioned to answer.
We leave it for them. But when you look at all this, we look at the 45 individuals that have been nominated and portfolios assigned to. Does it give you hope as a Nigerian, not just as a senator?
There's a French author. I want to I want to remember his name now, a French author, made a quotation called plus ça change, plus ou même chose. The more things change, the more they remain the same. What we're saying is actually the Buhari redux. It's something. We're not seeing anything that is progressive. You understand? So it's still the same APC, it's still the same mishmash of things, it's still the same misalignment of priorities, it's still the same taking one step forward and taking 10 steps backward. Of course, I really don't blame the APC. What would you do? They told you that they were going to do renewed something. We never asked them, what were you going to renew? We didn't know they were going to renew the same old things. And that's all that they did. So, it bothers everyone who is a patriot that we don't seem to be going forward. First of all, I can give you what my own feeling is. Number one, we're in serious trouble. Bloomberg, I think they wrote something the other day about our foreign exchange down to $3.7 billion. That means that a government that is actually should be prudent. Number one, first of all, you will be very, very prudent. You reduce your number of cars, you reduce the number of planes, you reduce the number of ministers, you reduce everything. But now we simply see an overbloating of everything. So what do you think you're going to get? What will you get? You know, it just seems that they do not seem to understand the depth of the problems of the country. Look, at the time that Obasanjo came in 20-something years ago, we had a foreign reserve of 4-point-something billion. He built it to the extent that he now also exited us from debt. So, what we're saying does not seem like an A-team that will take us where we need to go. All that we seem to say is, like I said before, same old, same old.
Well, we're almost concluding, but I'd like to just quickly ask two questions. One is, do you see the suffering of Nigerians with the fuel, with the foreign exchange? Do you see the sufferings of Nigerians? Secondly, I've traveled around the world. I know you've traveled even more than I have done. Is there anywhere in the world where people exchange money or foreign exchange exchanges hands and there's no documentation, no receipt, and nothing?
Nowhere in the world. Because, I can answer that without thinking.
Because we are talking about helping the Naira. We pump money and all that. Anyway, I hope that even in this program we'll get some experts to talk about it. But I am asking, why can't we have a cashless foreign exchange process? Because we hear that governors, in quotes, and political office holders, in quotes, get whatever money and then they dump it in the foreign, with their bookies. And nobody's asking. It's only in Nigeria, I think, that you can go and exchange $200,000 and nobody will ask you, where did you get it from? Who are you giving it to? Why are you buying it? And
well,
do we think are we thinking that the Naira would ever improve under this kind of situation?
There is actually legislation to that. There's CBN rules to that. There's bank rules to that. It's just that nobody is bothering about enforcing the rules that are there. And so you find those things happening. Secondly, which comes back to your original question, the members of the legislature actually feel more of the impact of the problems of the average Nigerian than the members of the executive. And it's so easy to know. A governor is surrounded by a phalanx of security people. all manners of hangers on and all that. So you can't approach a government house. They stop you at the first gate. Do you have an appointment? You don't have. So how are you going to do? If you manage to pass the first gate, they stop you at the second gate. If you manage to pass the second gate, they stop you at the distance of the office. If you manage to pass that, you now get to the inner sanctum, and then you stay and you wait, and then if the big man wants to see you, the governor, then he sees you. Never happens with a member of the legislature. Everybody walks, passes your gate, comes into your sitting room and sits. Most people don't know the numbers of governors. Governors all have people who are holding their phones, who screen their calls, who determine who they talk to and all that. Nobody's holding my phone, so I get to talk to anybody. I get people send me a message, and if I get...
And that also includes the ministers. The ministers too have
they also have the litany of people. So if I get, let's say, 30 messages a day, 28 is seeking for one form of help or the other. So it's very, very clear and very, very open to each and every one of us the sufferings Nigerians are going through. And that's why you find that when we continue shouting and they say, oh, don't mind him, he's a troublemaker. We're not troublemaker, we're just talking about the realities of life of Nigerians. Things are very, very bad now. And we know. And so what we try to do is to see, okay, can we help? Whichever way can we help? The one you can do, you do. The one you cannot do, of course, there's nothing you can do much about it. But I can tell you that the government is set up for the welfare of Nigerians. So any government that comes, and rather than improve your welfare, rather worsens your condition, does not abide by the first rule, the welfare of the people of Nigeria. And so every time that we speak with government people, we try our very best to say to them, think about Nigerians. Think about Nigerians. But, you know, we also are very aware that when people just get cocooned, they get only those information that are filtered to reach them. Look, Obasanjo used to get up and disguise himself and walk into a restaurant. Sometimes he walks into a supermarket. He gets a feel of the populace. He also had a contrarian. The late Stanley Makebu was a contrarian. So when policies and all that comes, and people say we are advocating this policy, he will ask him, what do you think? And that one is a contrary voice. I say, don't accept this one because it's not correct. What this man is saying does not attune. Because people will always want to tell you what they think you ought to hear that will not make you feel bad about your policy. Nobody who comes to tell you, said, you're messing up. Nobody. That's what is going on with most governments. All that we see, KBSU, and then everything continues to go bad.
Let me end by saying that the KBSU doesn't look like it's going to end soon. If a minister of the Federal Republic, the only way he can show appreciation to the president is to go on the floor on national television. Distinguished Senator, I'd like to thank you
My pleasure.
For your time and your always sincere opinion. I'm really, really happy.
It's my pleasure. At any time, you can always call me. Anytime. Thank you.
And that's our interview with the one and only Enyinnaya Abaribe. Stay tuned. The Signature Show continues in a moment.